here at Tennessee Railroad Valley Museum. Southern 6914R sitting here. Here again, their 630 steam engine next to Norfolk's line over here.
Way as you enter from the parking lot is currently operational. So all of that you're looking at right now is left, making the other side not your left, right? You're awake, right? Okay, here we go. So your Grand Junction station is currently on your right as we cross over the main walkway. We've even brought 6914 over for you. An incredible Streamliner diesel E8 built by General Motors, the electric motor division of 1953. And once we have that out and operating, it will pull all stainless cars. Just like it did for the Crescent or the Southern Railway. 3164 is a 1924 Southern Railway dining car. 829 is a 1949 all stainless lightweight coach. Traveler's Fair is a heavyweight Pullman built in 1924 for the Southern Railway. Clover Colony was built in 1920 and Marilyn Monroe filmed some of the scenes from Come Like It Hot using that very heavyweight coach built when it was on the West Coast. 2 diesels a tab and the 5000. Now I need you all to look down and to the left, and you're probably asking yourselves, what am I looking for? What am I looking at? Well, what appears to be a very insignificant looking gravel driveway was the original location of the East Tennessee, Virginia, and Georgia Railroad. Now, where we're traveling today on our right-of-way, up elevation, built up in height, moved over to the right, is the Southern Railway's modifications. Every time I point out the original portions of the line, or you'll see railroad ties laid out, that will indicate to you the original line versus the Southern Railway's modifications. And you know what? This area was actually double tracked by Southern. 2 trains could pass each other. We are operating on a main line that was abandoned in the 1950s. A 3-mile stretch used today up and behind the station before a departure on the hill. That main line was completed in the early 1950s. Look down and to the left. You see that sign talking about the Great Flood of 1867 with the 1859 location. The waters we're crossing over right now would rise 9 feet above that original railroad. Now, one of the first things that Southern Railway does is they move the right-of-way over to the right where we're currently operating, and obviously building up the elevation. Look down to the left. See those bridge piers down below? Now look upstream, you see a modern day bridge. 2 things. That upstream bridge was a fully wood-covered bridge used by the Western Atlantic, which was completely burned and destroyed by Unionists. Very supportive of the Union armies and the outbreak of the American Civil War. When they find it unguarded, they set it ablaze. Where our picnic tables are located on the end of our parking lot where the pine trees are located, the Western Atlantic built a temporary diverting line that would branch in to the line we're using today, utilizing the bridge until they could reconstruct their own bridge. Now, the bridge piers you saw just a few moments ago down below, the stone bridge piers, were the 1880s replacement piers. The first were very decorative, like a stone arch, like a Roman viaduct in the 1850s, but by the 1880s, they start to destabilize. They replaced those bridge piers with much more simple bridge piers. Now, as we pull right by our other operating steam locomotive, the 4501, built in 1911 by the Baldwin Locomotive Works. That's our separate train today. That's Train B. Junior varsity. Little earlier when Springfield. Now, you see our crew on our 906. 906 was built in 1924 for the Central of Georgia. It's number 528.
They start at 9:30.
1037 is a 1911 coach built by the Southern. It's a sleeper known as the Hazen, rebuilt to a standardized coach. And there is 661, I believe. That was, now that's 907. That was number 543. If you're in the coach I'm speaking from, that coach will be in the same color as your blue and gray, number 543. Now, here we go on our siding. And as we leave and switch back to the main line, I need those of you on your right to look over and see more railroad ties. It's just enough width and slope on both sides where you can imagine the original railroad running along this area. Now, obviously, roots and trees are going up to the middle of the original railroad gauge. But if you could trace a line based upon the 1850s line, and later the 1920s when the Southern Railway modifies it, you can see that your old line would cross zigzag, zigzag, back and forth across the Southern Railway's changes. We're crossing over Western and Atlantic. Now today, modern day, it's operated by CSX.
This
Now,
is
the
a
Western
CSX
Atlantic
line
is the
down
first
here.
major
We are
railroad
crossing over.
connecting the state of Georgia to the state of Tennessee. And in fact, one of the more popular stories of the Great Locomotive Chase takes place along the Western Atlantic, where James Andrews, a civilian, heads up and picks men from Ohio infantry regiments that had worked for the railroads in their civilian service. They are to capture the wood-burning locomotive, the General, at Big Shanty Station, right around the modern-day Kennesaw, Georgia area. The plan is to take that train with a few of the cars still connected after everyone gets off the train to eat breakfast at the hotel in Kennesaw. It's set for those crew members and those men who are ready to move the train without the passengers upon it. They are to tear up track. They are to burn bridges after crossing over. Everything needed to disrupt the Confederate supply line, and more importantly, the Confederate reaction as a Union army in Huntsville, Alabama, is to sweep down upon Chattanooga. Chattanooga is known as the gateway to the Deep South. All the railroad systems converge centrally into the city. And did you know that Chattanooga was not known as Chattanooga, which derives from a Native American word, until after the Native Americans are removed in the 1830s on the Trail of Tears? It was known as Ross's Landing. Daniel and later his son, Chief John Ross, only a quarter Cherokee, to liaison very effectively between the white population. Chattanooga derives from a Native American word in Creek, Shadol-no-Agsa, which means rock coming to a point, referring very specifically to Lookout Mountain at the very end point, just beyond the incline railway where the National Park Service operates Point Park today. By the way, Chickamauga means river of death because of the epidemic of yellow fever, which was spread by mosquitoes. After the Battle of Chickamauga, the Union Army, who had suffered the defeat 2 months prior before the battles of Chattanooga, the river of death, because of the terrible epidemic of yellow fever, you would settle along the river banks and the creek banks because of the water supply. Mosquitoes, however, hover around during the summer. After the Battle of Chickamauga, 34,000 casualties, plus it was known by the soldiers as a river of blood. We're about to cross over Tunnel Boulevard minus the tunnel. You see, this was a continuous tunnel, an earthen hill dug out so that automobile traffic could actually pass directly underneath the railroad. Now, when this line, this 3-mile stretch, was abandoned in the 1950s, so too was the tunnel. The city of Chattanooga removes this tunnel. And so when the Southern Railway begins to donate more and more property to the museum we were forced to span this gap with a bridge, building it here in the early 1970s. Tunnel Boulevard. Now, why in the world did they abandon this 3-mile stretch? We are about to figure it out. This was double track, but we were about to contend with the same structure they were forced to contend with. We're about to experience 986 feet, almost 3 football fields long of tunnel, mostly dug by hand. You see, the year completion was 1858. The year dynamite was invented was 1867. The problem with the alternative of black powder, if it gets wet, it's useless. I encourage you to get your flashlight app or any device you may have with a flashlight. Get it pulled up and ready as we begin to make our way inside a very, extremely narrow, antiquated tunnel they were having to use before they built that bypassing line. As we pass through, there's only a few areas that any more than a foot and a half of clearance is present between the tunnel walls and your train. As they begin to use hand tools to pick through this structure, once they break through, the tunnel walls begin to collapse as far as the structure digging it out. The light begins to pour through. They're only a foot and a half off, just a few inches, in fact, from each other. The soldiers fighting right above this tunnel, the Army of Tennessee, the Texas Consolidated Brigade of the Tennesseans, had just gotten back in the line. They're facing in the direction we're heading. Sherman makes a fierce assault, in fact, 4 fierce assaults. Every one of those soldiers in both armies knew you had to keep your powder dry with a black powder rifle musket. Very important for them, very important for the construction of this tunnel. Ladies and gentlemen, 986 feet, completed in 2 years, mostly dug by hand. Whiteside Tunnel, named after Colonel James Whiteside, a stockholder and investor in this project. Here we go. Do you understand why they wanted to build a diverting line? Now, even though double tracked on both sides of Missionary Ridge, ladies and gentlemen, you had a 2-story tower. Now, there's a booklet known as Railroads in Chattanooga, and in the foreground is the tower. Gentlemen standing in front of it in these Chattanooga Portland Tunnel in the background. Okay? You were responsible as the controller, as the switcher, for switching one train to the siding built on either end, and the other train to pass through. Disastrous if you did not do your job correctly. Notice the very steep embankments and corridors we exit Missionary Ridge. Those of you on your right will look over, and the only thing left over of the 2-story tower is a bit of the foundation. Now Sherman, as he attacks, as Napoleonic style and strategy would dictate, the front rear rank, he tries to attack this area. They have to spread out. Sherman cannot break through. The Army of the Cumberland, the Union Army who had just suffered the defeat at Chickamauga 2 months prior, on the far left, they go up without orders, every man for himself, including an 18-year-old boy colonel, the father of Douglas MacArthur, which would later win acclaim. Arthur MacArthur winning the Congressional Medal of Honor in U.S. history here at the battles of Chattanooga. Sherman would not write about this very much in detail, but one of his officers on his staff would say, "It was a stinging disappointment for the general, and he would give vent to his feelings in language of astonishing vivacity." Extremely dramatic, right? But in other words, they were able to break through. Now as we enter East Chattanooga and the yard here, looking down and to the right, continuing out on about a 5% grade, which is how we access points south, such as our dinner trains. Right now, we have currently suspended our 6-hour and 9.5-hour trips. There's some bridge work needed to be done over Chattanooga Creek. Hopefully this next year we'll be allowed to continue and to resume those operations. But that line is a very historical railroad, which had many different branch lines and spurs accommodating different businesses. Now, after the Civil War, much needed jobs came into the area due to the industry from northern factories moving into the area because of all the natural resources. Did you know that Chattanooga was one of the most polluted cities in the United States at one time because of the factory emissions? When we come into the yard, wait till we come to a complete stop. Now, this is not meant to be a scenic waterfall stop. This is meant to be a working rail yard, and it in fact is. We do all of our restoration, all of our maintenance, all of our rebuild. Our crew is phenomenal. They are very skilled. And as we come into the yard, you'll see a very tall building. That is our back shop facility. That will be the second part of our East Chattanooga tour. So once we complete our turntable demonstration, you'll need to meet me at the back of the train where the walkway is located. Wait for me there, and I'll take you over to that taller building, the 10-ton crane, the 6-foot drop pits, various equipment on the way over. We've moved some of it over to Grand Junction for display. There's a lot of work going on here. We restore all of our own steam locomotives. We do different locomotive work for different museums. This is a great opportunity. I will talk to you first at the turntable, and we'll take a walk over to that larger, taller building, and then we will conclude. By the way, our East Chattanooga Depot is open with snacks, drinks, and souvenirs, restrooms, and across the walkway is an additional building with restroom facilities. Wait till we come to a complete stop if you'd like to see the turntable. As soon as you step off, you'll need to take a left, walk all the way down past the remaining coaches, past the locomotive to a roped-off turntable area. I need everyone, for your safety, to keep your feet behind that painted yellow line. I will walk down and meet you there, and we'll get started. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Lots more to talk about do&see, and I will see you at the table in a few moments.
Welcome to the yard.
Company in Brisbane works. Originally built as a simple K-class modified, it's a KS1 consolidation. Now, anytime you read about or view the description of any steam locomotive, you're going to see a prefix of numbers. Now, what those numbers represent is the wheel arrangement on that particular locomotive. So, being that this is a 280, let's start counting wheel set. That's how the wheel arrangement is designated, based upon two or more things that look alike. There's your twins right there. Your set of two lead pilot wheels. Behind those, a set of larger driving wheels, 4 on both sides. So 2, 4 plus 4 is 8, and 0 underneath. 0 trailing wheels underneath the cab. Now, you know what? So many hundreds and thousands of steam locomotives, like Locomotive 630, were scrapped. After all, steam locomotives, very simply put, are dirty. And once the diesel locomotive comes into fruition and is introduced to the railroads, major railroads first, larger railroads, were phasing in diesel very quickly and phasing out the steam locomotives. So how does the 630 survive? Like so many that survived, it was actually sold secondhand to the East Tennessee and Western North Carolina Railroad. And they used it for many years until Southern Railway begins to figure out that nostalgia among the general population, wanting, craving the steam locomotive excursion, needing steam locomotives, they actually purchased this locomotive. At that time, it was number 207. Because of its second-hand purchase, because of the Southern Railway needing steam locomotive to run their steam program, they purchased this steam locomotive back. Actually, they swapped for two newer diesel locomotives, which, by the way, that railroad was more than happy to oblige, and they received the 630 and 722 back. It is saved. Listen very closely. You see the end car down there at the walkway. If you would like to enjoy and walk over to the back shop for a second part of our tour, you'll need to meet me down at the very end of that car, right there at the walkway, and I will walk you over to our back shop facility. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a round of applause to our engineer and fireman up in the 630 for safely.
That's a great shot. Oh my gosh, you can see it. Switch. Going into the tunnel.
No, it's extreme west. It's the west side of Asheville.
Oh yeah.
It's really not that far.
This was double track.
It's in the mountains. The prettiest species of river in the south, I think. Follows the Nantahala River.
Did you hear about the drill that happened? There was a drill and I'm on a separate day.
There's the cement track.
It was on a branch on the Springfield. But that's the beat unit right there.
That's another combine. Another 90,000. I wonder what's that Vanderbilt product?
Probably from a national chapel sectors,
There's that much right here.
yeah, we're slowing down. We'll possibly need to put something up right here. 45 on one?
Oh, they were slowing down because another train's passing by. Another train passing by.
Right here.
So this is a CSX main line.
Yep, that's the Western Atlantic main line between Atlanta and Chattanooga.
Is it a running railroad?
No, this is actually an active main line.
Oh, this is an active.
Yes. And the other main line is Norfolk Southern. That's past Grand Junction.
It's on the other side of this ridge over here.
Yeah. Oh, is that the separate track for the customers?
Yeah, that's the Tyner Terminal sub. That leads up to where the Volkswagen plant is at TVRM services.
Oh, okay.
For the Tyner Terminal subsidiary.
Oh, there.
And the Norfolk Southern Bridge, right there, Grand Junction, that crosses over this track.
Okay, we're going into the siding now.
like ever. Yes. Yeah. CSX is in there. This is abandoned, I believe.
Just me, when I was for 16 anniversary, I thought would probably be stuff like this, stuff with Casey. No, but I thought it would be that.
We're not going to go to the Highlands Road. It's not far forever. Past.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are now arriving at our Grand Junction station. Please wait till we come to a complete stop before exiting. We do certainly appreciate your time. Today, we hope you have a wonderful rest of your weekend and week ahead. Thank you for spending time. I also encourage you to check out some of the trips we have going on later in the year. Now we're not able to zoom on a longer 6 hour, 9.5 hour trips at this time. We'll be having coming up in November our North Pole Limited. Now we learned quite a bit due to the restrictions we had last year about doing things a certain way. We'll still incorporate some of those, but what we did have
North Line, I believe, because it goes upwards.
wonderful trip, great crew. We also have our dinner
Yeah,
trip.
it goes the other side and up.
Full dining crew on all
And
cars,
split.
stewards, everything's made
And
fresh
there's
on
CSX.
kitchens on the dining car, so I encourage you to check
Actually,
that out.
CSX has a
Continue to check out our updates on tvworld.com as well as some of our Facebook pages. We have 4, so you have no excuse not to pay attention to those Facebook pages. We have a main page, a Steam page, an Easy page, a name passenger car page, very specific. So hopefully between those 5, you can keep up to date with us. And if you just like to do some awesome, happy, I guess send us a message. We will be more than happy to answer any questions. That way we tell you you're on here with us. You want to have fun the rest of your day, and I'll see you bye.
Yep. Come on.